All right. So, actually, I haven't even really thought about the opening.
Let's start with who we are.
Yeah. So, hello, my name is Elliot.
I'm Michelle,
Why are you waving?
because I'm used to waving. I'm used to, this is Michelle, and I wave.
Yeah.
I'm the red human.
And between the three of us, we have absolutely zero professional film experience, which makes us perfectly suited to critique films on the internet because we're internet content makers.
Are we critiquing the film, or are we just talking about it?
No, we're just going to be talking about it.
Yeah.
It's not really a critique.
Yeah.
We are not.
It is not a review.
Yeah.
It's not a review. And in fact, it's kind of a movie that's, I don't want to say universally liked, but most people have seen this movie, and there's not that much to say about it that's bad. Some people are like, yeah, it just didn't hit me, but
But at the same time, and I'm sure I'm going to say this over the next 90 minutes, but this movie is like super timeless. Right? Like you'll watch it, and I mean, yeah, of course they're talking about the year 2000 and they're using old Macs, but if you like kind of gloss past that, this movie isn't super dated.
Right.
Right?
Old Macs that run Windows.
Well, no. They're Macs that close down to DOS.
Yeah.
You'll see.
Yeah.
But I mean, but everything in this movie just feels so ageless, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
The subject matter, especially.
It's a cult following. It has a huge cult following.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's actually true anymore. It had a cult following because it wasn't really that big when it came out.
No, it was. I don't know if it was a flop, but it was not super successful.
But
It was a
it
flop,
gained
yeah.
popularity after the fact once it became, out in video and everything, and it had a cult following for a while. I think it's actually reached a point now where it's such a piece of the zeitgeist that, like, I feel like most people our age have seen this movie.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
We should save some of our things to talk about during the movies.
We
We'll
should
definitely do that.
also mention the fact that the movie we're talking about is Office Space.
Oh,
That-
right.
Yeah, we should probably
We-
do that
we
too.
had-
It's down in the video title.
We're
Yeah.
super professional.
So yeah, we're going to do a commentary track over this. You're gonna get to listen to us being goobers and talking about movies and drinking beer.
And drinking beer. What are we drinking today, Elliot?
We are drinking Alpha Abstraction. Which version is this?
This is volume 8
Okay, it is
from Wild Leap,
Yes, it's Wild Leap.
a Georgia brewery.
And it is fantastic. Alpha Abstraction is a line of beers that they periodically change. The formula stays the same, but the hops and the different
Like the batches change.
where they get the different ingredients and things like that to make the actual beer. So each batch tastes slightly different. This one is a little bit fruitier than the previous ones, but it's a nice IPA it's not got a really hard kick to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of IPAs, really, and I really like Alpha Abstraction.
I'm a super big fan of IPAs.
Yeah. All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to put something, we're going to have a countdown on the screen for them for when they see a logo or something. Is that right?
Yeah, this is kind of a tricky thing to work out in general, but I think as long as they're within a couple of seconds of us, because they're not
Yeah.
listening to the audio of the movie, just
Right.
us.
Yeah.
So
In case it's not clear, you are supposed to be listening to this while having the movie on as well, or listen to this on your own.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're doing, and we're trying to
live your best life.
yeah, we're trying to
live your best life.
we're trying to spice up the podcast environment by doing something radically different than anyone else. No one else does this.
Yeah, no one else does movie commentary tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're the first people to ever think of this.
Well, the only one I can think of aside from Red Letter Media is what did you say it was?
I mean, riff tracks, but that's specifically
Yeah.
a MST3K
And then-
offshoot.
And they're making fun of the movie instead of doing commentary.
Yeah.
Which is different.
Yeah. Anyway, so You should see a countdown on the screen for when you see the Fox logo. Would you want to do that?
Logo it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the 20th century logo.
Yeah. So as soon as you see the first spotlight go across the screen for 20th Century Fox,
Yeah.
start then.
Yeah. Start the. No. We'll figure
I'll
it out.
figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
I will figure it
Press
out because
press play when the video's telling you to press play.
I will figure it out because that's my job, and you guys just do the movie.
Yeah, we just do the movie.
This immediately hits too close to home right now as I just drove through rush hour traffic in downtown Atlanta experiencing this opening scene exactly. Only I'm driving a Honda, not a Toyota.
Now, Red Human, what did you say earlier? We were talking about the movie a little bit.
I was saying that this scene in particular, you can totally tell that it was filmed in Texas.
Yes.
Around the DFW Austin area, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's heavily implied that this movie is supposed to be in Silicon Valley, so California. They never explicitly say where they are, but it's heavily implied. And because this movie is based off of Mike Judd's experience working in Silicon Valley in one of these types of jobs,
wasn't Silicon? I thought he worked at Lockheed. He was an engineer at Lockheed, right?
He specifically worked in Silicon Valley at a tech company much like this, which is why he wrote this movie.
But the idea of the timelessness of the movie.
I love this entire sequence, right? Because when you see Michael, this nerdy white guy, rapping in the car, and then turns the music down and locks the door when he sees what we're led to believe is a homeless person
Selling flowers on the side of the street.
Like, that tells you everything you need to know about his character, right?
Yep.
Anyway, I disagree. I don't think this is... I think this is supposed to feel both kind of like Texas and also just like America, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's specifically geographical, but it's implied that that's the kind of feel that they're going for.
Well.
The Silicon Valley tech industry in the 90s, that kind of...
Yeah. Only
yucky.
nothing about the environment that they're in looks like...
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why
Nah.
it's funny.
Here's my question. When this movie gets a reboot, will Lumbergh be driving a Tesla
Yes.
instead of a Porsche?
Yes.
I hope this movie doesn't get a reboot.
And it's not Porsche.
It doesn't
it's Porsche.
need one because,
It's
like you
Porsche.
said, it is completely timeless. That whole first starting sequence is everybody who sits in rush hour traffic in any city anywhere in the world. It is completely generic. And like as to what you were just saying, like this movie could take place literally anywhere.
Yeah. I wish Jeff was here. Unfortunately, Jeff can't join us today, but he will be in future podcasts. I wish that he was here because I feel like he has the most experience in corporate America, and I would love his perspective on The Office and just everything going on here. I've never worked in an office environment like this, but I remember growing up, my grandmother worked for a gigantic real estate company, and I would occasionally, like, for whatever reason, have to drop by the office with her or something, and it looked exactly like this. Like when I see this scene, I'm reminded of whenever I had to go to my grandmother's office with her.
My dad was the same thing. I remember at some point when I was very young, and I've mentioned this to my dad, and he doesn't remember this and doesn't think it happened, but I have memories of it, of going to his office while he had to do work on a weekend or something. And I vaguely remember him actually working on the hardware that is computers. But I was like playing with stuff in the office and and taken some things apart and playing with a typewriter because it was back in the day where typewriters were a thing that
Right.
nobody used but still existed in the office space. But
Yeah.
this is what I remember. I remember those cubicles that look like they have like carpet on the side of them. I remember
Yeah.
just people with files and books and crap, just like and God, the dot matrix printer
printer.
paper that gets pulled through.
There's this really phenomenal retrospective on this film that will link down below that I read a couple of months ago, and in a lot of ways is why we decided to select this as our first film. But Mike Judge is talking about like the set design and everything, and how he like butted heads with like the set designer because they wanted it to look, lively and something good to look at. And Mike Judge was like, no, it needs to be gray on gray. It needs to be depressing. It needs to be
Oppressive.
yeah. And he wanted it to look like it did in reality, again, because of his experience in this environment. And he totally succeeded in that. But I could totally understand how, from a filmmaking perspective, this is not the most exciting environment ever.
We've had that argument when talking about the stuff that we film. You and I really like the white background for the vlogs that we shoot. And the Red Human insists that it's boring and it's awful. And like, I don't know. I kind of like us swimming in a world of white. It looks like we're giving commentary on the stuff we do from Purgatory. Which is, again, that's kind of what this whole, everything that we see here, that
Right.
it feels like Purgatory. And like when you watch these people and that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. This always like super confused me because I feel like how does she not know who these people are? Right? She's reading off their names like she's never met them before. And she's like surprised Michael Bolton's name is Michael Bolton, but like don't they
Maybe-
work together?
Maybe she's new.
Maybe.
Maybe
Or
they've
she's the male guy.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, the obvious answer is they're setting up these characters, but
Yeah.
it's just very, very, very strange choice.
Or she's never interacted with them before because it's a giant office.
Yeah. Apparently, the term ass clown was entered into the, I think, Merriam-Webster's dictionary because
Really?
of this film. Yeah. Which I think is hilarious. And if I recall correctly, that line was supposed to be something else, and the actor improvised
Yes.
it. Yeah. And now it's become, literally a word in the dictionary.
You know, I love when that happens, and it happens. You hear about it all the time, and it's one of those things that people love to talk about is when an actor goes off script and it ends up being great. I would love to know. I don't want to hear when they do it wrong, but I would love to know how often an actor goes off script and it's just a nightmare. I'm willing
Probably-
to bet that it's like a 1 in a million that they actually say the
Yeah.
funnier, better thing.
And whenever they say, "Oh, the actor ad-libbed it and that made it in the movie," what that means is like that wasn't the take that made it in the movie. They're like, "Oh, that works. Let's do another take with that."
Yes.
Right. The one I can think of most recently is from Infinity War, when the Guardians and the Avengers are fighting, and they're having their little standoff. And Star-Lord's like, "Where's Gamora?" And Tony Stark says, "Who's Gamora?" Apparently, Dave Bautista improvised, "Why is Gamora?" And James Gunn made the Russos keep that in because it's so on character.
I was sipping my beer, so I couldn't, but I wanted to interject and
Oh, there's Mike Judge. We'll come back to him in a minute. I have some thoughts on him. I love Mike Judge, by the way.
where is Mike Judge in the middle in his career at this point? This is post.
This is just after Beavis and Butthead Do America. This is his first directorial debut in live action.
It's also right after King of the Hill, I believe, had finished its first or second season. King of the Hill had been out for a little bit, and he was on to, and he was kind of on fire. Like he had a blank check, which is how this film got made, because this is loosely based off of some of his very early animations that he sold
Milton.
to MTV. Yeah, Milton.
The Milton comic.
Yeah, was it a comic or was it an animation?
I believe it was a comic.
I thought it was an animation,
It may be an animation. I believe it was a comic though.
but I mean that's loosely based. What
believe
this
they
is based
said it at
off
the
of.
front,
Yeah, at the
in
very
the- in
beginning
the
they say it.
titles.
I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know what exactly it is, but the comedy that's in this movie, for whatever reason, is vaguely reminiscent of home movies to me.
Sure, yeah.
It's completely different in almost every way. But if anybody out there hasn't seen home movies, I highly suggest it.
The cartoon.
Yes, it's a poorly animated cartoon. It's ridiculous and hilarious and fantastic, and it didn't get popular because it was overshadowed in its day by other adult animated cartoons. I think most specifically probably Daria.
Yeah. I mean, we're like, what, 20 minutes into this movie, I think? And,
I doubt we're even that far.
God, we're 11 minutes into this movie, and, like, the characters are perfectly set up. We've already had some really phenomenal jokes. We know, like, everything that's going on with all of them. Like, this is such solid writing. And this is why Mike Judge could do anything that he wanted, right?
The only thing that he didn't like about this movie and the script was the third act. He wished that he could have rewritten the third act because he really hates it.
Yeah.
His ability to create these characters that make sense in a movie and are like caricatures of what we feel we are is the reason why he's so popular. Beavis and Butthead, while it was completely over the top, hit the zeitgeist because people loved. There was something about the characters that people attached to, even though they were absolutely fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent on Beavis and Butthead because it's definitely a topic I could talk at length about. But to paraphrase the Captain Christian video, MTV had its pulse, or had its finger on the pulse of America in a way that very, very few things ever have. The only thing that came after it was Adult Swim. But like MTV and everything that was involved with MTV at the time really understood people, and MTV attracted the type of artists and creatives that understood people. And yeah, Beavis and Butthead was ridiculous and over the top and unbelievable. But yeah, it was real quick, real briefly, you can see the name of his apartment complex is Morningwood, which is a joke that's on screen for like half of a second or something.
But it's classic. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I never really liked Beavis and Butthead that much. It just never hit for me. But King of the Hill is every single episode you turn on and is great.
And similar to Office Space, like you watch it now and it doesn't feel dated
At all.
right? It's just so it's such a great show. I can't remember the actor's name here who plays Lawrence, but apparently he was wearing this terrible fake mustache, and he like had trouble. He was concerned about it falling off when he was smiling, so that's why he doesn't like laugh or smile or anything, and apparently helped him from breaking character. But he's like Lawrence is such like a real character, you know?
Everybody in this movie seems like a real character.
Yeah.
Even Lumbergh, who's probably the most of a clown, of an actual character.
Diedrich Bader, that's his name.
No, you know what? Milton is the one that's the most like over the top character.
Yeah, Stephen Root.
Lundberg is a caricature of the boss everybody hates, and yet is so spot on for the boss everybody hates.
Yeah. Yeah. He's just like so zoned out and like clearly on something and just like barely there, you know, and you see him cut through briefly when he like snatches the stapler away from Milton and everything. But
It's just like he perfectly typifies that guy who's in charge, who's a douchebag, and nobody can figure out why he has the position he has. How the hell did he get there? And everybody can relate to dealing with that person, even if it wasn't in your job.
yeah, so going back to like this movie being like just such a part of,
I love that right there. There's these little stupid
Yeah.
things. Like he's holding out a bottle opener. No, I've got my own and I will use my own, even though it's not convenient.
yeah. God, I was gonna say something I totally lost.
Two chicks at the same time.
Oh yeah. That's,
Your favorite line that has ever been in any movie ever.
what?
You say that line all the time.
Okay, that actually speaks to what I was about to say. Is that this movie is such a part of like the culture that people reference this movie without even realizing it. Because
yeah.
I genuinely don't recall ever saying that.
Oh, you do? Yes.
But it must be something
It's
that just
actu-
comes out of my mouth
It's-
without knowing it.
In fairness, it's been a while.
Okay.
But it's definitely a thing
Yeah. But yeah, like,
and like if you'd asked me what movie that was from without just now seeing it, I would have said, I don't know, is it on Fast Times or like
no, I was more a Van Wilder college movie person than
what I'm saying is those were the kinds of movies
Sure,
that I
yeah,
would
yeah, yeah.
expect that line to be from. I don't remember it being part of this one. This is the best version of The Office that has ever existed.
So apparently, when they were exporting The Office from the UK to the US, they were looking at some people to be the showrunner for The Office, and whatever studio like tapped Mike Judge for this, and he was like kind of hemming and hawing about it and looked at some of the things they sent over. And I forget the exact quote, but basically some reviewer or something said the UK office is what Office Space was trying to be, but better. And Mike Judge was like, you know what, I'm okay. And then went on to make Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen much of, and I think I'd really like to see more of it, because I think it'd be exactly what a modern Office Space. What?
The red swing line stapler that Milton has did not exist
Yes.
before this movie.
Yes.
And because of this movie, Swingline actually went back and made it real because everyone was asking them for it.
So they've also made several different generations of it, and they made a generation where they changed it, and people are like, this isn't the one from the movie.
Yeah.
We want the one from the movie.
Yeah.
So they've gone back and made the one that looks closer to the one in the movie.
They had a special 20th anniversary release that is exactly like the one from
So,
the movie, and I
I
bought
would-
that one.
That this scene right here,
Reminds me of The Matrix.
The Matrix, every single fucking
And I
time.
feel like that was
The Matrix was
The Matrix
referencing.
Yeah.
Referencing Office Space.
it
You
would-
think the Wachowskis were watching this like, oh, that's good, and like writing like down notes and everything?
Yeah, because they're hack frauds.
You know what? I would like to see. That's
You want to do a cut of the Matrix scene, except all the Neo scenes are replaced with this?
Well,
Oh my God, Red Human, can you do that?
I want to see them. I want to see them like overlaid on each other because in my memory, and it might just be my memory
No.
changing things. Like he even looks the same way.
He does. It's very
It's like
close.
it's
If
super
not-
close.
It's very close, if not
All
exactly.
right, so, so
Okay.
there it was.
There-
It was Mac and it closed to DOS.
That's what I was talking about before. Is they're using Mac computers and they exit to DOS, which is not a thing.
I love that whole sequence is shot like a horror sequence, and then it
Yes.
ends with like the violin pull,
Yeah. Okay.
and then he's just like sitting here dejected. The you know, it makes me think that some of our audience may not be aware like what's really going on in this movie regarding the Y2K bug and everything.
Yeah.
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 Do we want to touch on that briefly?
I mean, I
Just because I find it radically interesting.
well, it's hilarious because it was I can't remember the number, but I read a number of the amount of money that different corporations invested in preparing for the Y2K bug, which ended up not being a thing.
Yeah, there was certainly some fallout, but it was not the doom and gloom that people predicted, and in reality was a real potential for what it to be. So for those of you who happen to not know what the Y2K bug was, they actually talk about it very briefly in this movie. And the short of it is a lot of software to save memory and hard drive space. They recorded dates with only 2 numbers for a year. And when the millennium was going to roll over, there was concerns about that causing all sorts of unexpected behaviors and banking software to have all sorts of problems and people losing money or money disappearing because all of a sudden, oh, it's the year 1900 instead of the year 2000. So there was this enormous push to update all the software out there. Although I remember very distinctly on New Year's night on 1999, you know, my parents, I was in my early teens, and my parents had a big, you know, New Year's party, and everyone was there, and of course my siblings were there. And as we did the countdown and everything, we all start cheering, and all of a sudden the lights turn off, and all of us like start freaking out because my brother, I found out, went downstairs and turned the power off to the house.
I don't
Yes, what's that?
remember the context of this scene. Is he in group therapy?
No, he's
in couples therapy.
no, it's not in couples therapy. He's in occupational hypnotherapy. They talk about it briefly when they're in the restaurant. His Peter's girlfriend wants him to go here. That's his girlfriend who's in like this scene and none other.
She was supposed to be in more scenes, but they cut her
Yeah,
out
and
or
they got
something
cut
like
out.
that.
Yeah.
And he's having a heart attack.
Yes.
Yeah. While he's telling him to, release inhibitions or blah, blah, blah. And he never wakes him up. And so now he's stuck in this quote unquote hypnotized state where he like doesn't give a fuck about anything.
Yeah, I mean, I know what happens in the scene.
Sure.
I didn't remember the context for like how we got
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, when they were talking about it during the restaurant scene that he's going to go see an occupational hypnotherapist with his girlfriend, and that's why he can't play poker with Michael and Samir.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen this movie, actually. So,
And we were talking over the dialogue.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, because this is a podcast slash
So
movie
We
commentary
ain't-
track.
We ain't paying attention to the real movie.
Oh, that's fine.
It's too quiet. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing really to talk about.
Yeah,
in this
I mean,
scene.
yeah. I was trying to think if there's anything that I left off what I was trying to say before, but I can't think of anything. So
Well,
Red Human, do you have any fun trivia about this film that you'd like to share?
nothing that's relevant at this
Nothing
point.
that's relevant at this point. Yeah, I mean, Mike Judge is I love all of his work because it's so real.
Yes.
And like he writes so well, you know. And it's just another. This movie is. I think actually this movie might be my favorite of his. King of the Hill is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, and Beavis and Butthead was important at the time. And I've not seen much of Silicon Valley,
But also, this is his only movie.
yeah, this is only no. He did Idiocracy too.
He did Idiocracy and Extract,
Yeah.
which Extract is kind of like a spiritual sequel to this movie. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I don't think I have.
It's very good. You should watch it.
I will check it out.
I believe it's on Netflix.
What's
Okay.
good?
Extract.
I haven't even heard of it.
I work with plebeians.
I did not do my research before watching this video.
It is it's not necessarily a sequel, but it's a spiritual sequel to this movie, Extract. It's very good. It's got the guy from Arrested Development, whose name I can't remember at the top of my head.
Which guy?
The main guy.
Michael?
Yeah.
I can't remember his name either. The actor's name. So,
Well, that's the unfortunate thing. I feel like everybody in here gave a really great performance, and I don't think you see most of these people
not
in very
true.
much.
I mean, well, okay, maybe not in very much, but Stephen Root, the guy that plays Milton, he was the bank teller in the second story in Buster Scruggs.
I mean, of course, Jennifer Aniston. What
Sure.
blah blah blah. Whatever.
What?
I want to talk about the schlotch what's it called?
Tchotchkes, the
Tchotchkes.
restaurant that they're in, where
It's
she works.
yeah. It's Chili's.
Yes.
Well,
So it's heavily implied that it's Chili's.
TGI Fridays.
TGI
Yeah,
Fridays.
that's better.
You
Yes.
said the wrong thing and fucked me up. But the thing about the flare, it's an ongoing joke in the movie with the flare, and in real life, after this movie came out, not right after, but a couple years after this movie came out, TGI Friday changed their policy on the flare because people kept coming in and were making fun of and referencing the movie, and they didn't like that, so they stopped their employees from wearing flare because of this movie.
What they should have done is just close their doors permanently because that restaurant is awful and serves swill.
That's true.
Yeah. When I at my day job, when I was at maximum not giving a fuck, I have two monitors, and on one monitor I had one of the Bobs, and on the other monitor I had the other Bob as my background, because the question is, what would you say you do here exactly? And this is some years ago when I was not doing.
And now you just have both of the Bobs on both monitors. I've seen your background.
No.
It's now I have it is from Always Sunny. It's Mac and Charlie when they're at the restaurant and they lock eyes at each other and they're just staring at each other from across the restaurant.
It's great.
Yeah. So the Tchotchke set, similar to the Office set, Mike Judge and like the set designer, clash because Mike Judge was like, no, there needs to be more shit on the walls. There needs to be stuff everywhere. I don't want to see the wallpaper. And so they just kept putting more shit up and more shit up. And that was a real restaurant. Obviously it's not called Tchotchkes. No, it's Tchotchkes, like the little Tchotchkes, right?
I know.
Elliot's favorite word.
I do love that word.
But yeah, so like they clash like that because Mike Judge wanted more and more and more and had this like such a specific vision for everything in this film. And I mean, I'm glad he got his way, but
It is hilarious how he can be so specific about exactly what he wants, and what he wants are in general these archetypes.
Yeah.
Everything that he builds is an archetype. It's not one specific person. None of the people in this movie are individuals so much as they are archetypes of people that we know.
yeah.
Like this whole thing right here, he went a little bit different way because it's visual medium and they're actors, so he didn't want to be like, oh, you look like this actor.
Right.
He didn't want to pull the Ocean's 12. Ocean's 12.
Ocean's 12.
He didn't want to pull that shit. So he gave a character the name because everybody knows somebody who gets constantly compared to so-and-so actor.
Right. Yeah,
I do not look like Seth Rogen.
You do not look like Seth Rogen.
Picture of Seth Rogen here. And then picture of Elliot.
Would you the actor who plays the one Bob who was on Scrubs, like, so he's been on things.
Yes, he's been in movies and stuff. He's other than Scrubs, he hasn't really been in anything big.
Sure.
I think what he means is the main character.
Like the
Yeah.
main three guys.
Yeah.
Which is true.
I don't
Except for Ron Livingston, who has done things.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
But like it's not like some of these other movies where it has a bunch of no names who end up being actors in a lot of things afterwards.
Yeah.
Well,
And I think we're about to say the same thing. Go ahead.
also, they wanted more stars in this movie, and
The studio wanted more
the
stars.
studio wanted more stars in this movie, and Mike
Like
Judge's
Brad Pitt auditioned for this.
yeah, Brad Pitt
for the role of
and
Peter.
somebody else.
Which would have been
George
famous.
Clooney, I think.
Yeah, I think George Clooney did as well, and Mike Judd was like, no.
both
Yeah.
of them are way too pretty for this movie.
Yeah, Mike Judge had a very specific vision for what he wanted things to be, which is kind of how they got Jennifer Aniston, because the studio wanted a name, right? They wanted something safe that they could bank on, even if
And market.
even if her role is relatively small in the film.
And it's way, way small,
Mm-hmm.
which became a problem when it came to marketing, which was poorly handled and didn't help this movie.
Yeah,
And Mike Judd hates the poster.
Yeah.
The poster.
the guy covered in post-it
the guy
notes.
covered in post-it notes, he hates it so much. And then they had in the lead up to this movie, they had a guy sit in Times Square in a glass cubicle for a week or something like that as marketing. And he's like, the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why this movie tanked so hard at the box office, because the marketing strategy was awful and no one knew what this movie was supposed to be. And they were like, oh, but we can't put Jennifer Aniston on the poster because she doesn't have a big role, and we can't market it to these other people because they don't have a name.
Yeah. Well, and how do you market this movie, right? In one Elliot, in one sentence, sell this movie to me. I've never seen this movie or heard of it. Give me one sentence that's going to make me want to watch it. And that's kind of the problem. And I'm going to let you actually formulate this.
Yeah, I'm having trouble because
Right?
the fact of the matter is it's a comedy movie about the life that we all live.
Right. And so watch the trailers for this movie. They had no idea how to market this, even though it's an incredibly hilarious film,
Yeah.
The
TV spots and the trailers are really
just
bad too.
it's such a weird movie to describe and market.
Well, it's
Okay,
an interesting
one sec to go back to the swing line thing. So apparently, as the Red Human was saying, Swingline did not sell a red stapler.
Well, they did, but they discontinued it.
Yeah, but it wasn't that color either.
No.
So whatever, prop master or whatever, got one of their staplers, put some Bondo on it, painted it, and then it became this big cultural thing, oh, you took my stapler. So not only has Swingline since made and sold this model, and then this year did a 20th anniversary release of it, it has become a part of their internal corporate marketing stuff,
Yeah.
where every new employee gets a red stapler, and they have signs in their break rooms or whatever. There's have you seen my stapler, or or whatever the line is.
He took my stapler.
Yeah. And apparently they contacted other stapler companies and none of them were interested. And Swingline was the bottom of their list, and they're like, yeah, sure, why not? And it totally turned their brand around, being involved in this movie that essentially was a flop, right?
Yeah.
It's just so phenomenal how things like that happen. And again, speaking to how interesting this movie is.
Again, speaking to, I keep saying the fucking word. I swear I haven't said the word zeitgeist this many times in the past like 5 years.
And you said it
like,
3 times in this podcast.
Right. But that's what this
4.
movie is, right? It is absolutely part of the social zeitgeist, even if people don't know, like you said before, even if people don't know that they're referencing this movie, there are lines.
Also,
there
hold
are,
on. The whiteboard says planning to plan. Anyway,
right.
I'm sorry.
Which speaks to, again, anybody who's ever been in a fucking meeting. The number of times I've been in a meeting that was to plan a meeting is depressing. But
and like this meeting here where Peter's meeting with the Bobs, like this is like such a fantasy realization of anyone who's ever been in this environment, right? Of course you want to sit there, and not even just corporate environments, but like working in retail, working in food service. Of
Any
course,
job.
Yeah, you want to sit there and really just tell them how you feel, like you don't give a fuck.
I really like the shot.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say how it was cut because I'm gonna say the wrong thing, and then the red human's gonna yell at me. But the way
we've all seen that meme where every camera movement is a pan.
Every camera movement is a pan. So as it pans around in a circle and it comes to sit in between the Bobs, looking at him, and he's glowing, right?
I believe it's a tracking shot.
Yeah. I think it's the sequence where they filmed a lot of it. They just kind of kept ad-libbing with this, or maybe it was earlier with the other employee whose name I can't remember right now.
The angry man.
Yeah.
Who breaks his leg.
Yeah, well, he gets hit by a car. But I it's one of these 2 sequences where they just like go and go and go, and there's all of this like ad-libbed sequences. I actually do think it's with the other guy.
So the things that date this movie is nothing about the writing, nothing about the characters, nothing about anything that actually happens in the movie. But what dates this movie are the things in the movie, and they are hilarious to me. The braided leather suspenders
Yeah, that's
are
pretty good.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say before...
Sorry, yeah.
No. Was it is easy to compare this movie to The Office because they both take place in an office, and they're kind of this weird comparison to what Office Like is actually like, but still being a caricature of it. I think a better comparison for this movie to a TV show is Seinfeld.
Yeah. All right, hold on. I agree with that. I love the sequence here with Mike Judge's cameo as the restaurant manager, because I feel like listening to his lines, you
Did
can
not know that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you can hear every single Mike Judge character in his voice, right? You can hear Hank Hill. You can hear the teachers from Beavis and Butthead. You can hear every single one of his character in his voice. If you're listening at home, rewatch this sequence, and maybe it's just Mike Judge's voice being Mike Judge, but I can't help but think of that every time I watch the scene.
And the only reason he's playing this character is because he couldn't find anybody else to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally. Mm-hmm. He was like, no one else can do it. I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Similar to Brad Bird voicing Edna Mode in The Incredibles.
Yeah.
Right. He called up.
So many people.
Well, no, he had some. I can't remember her name. Someone very specific in mind. And like he was like trying to like get her to do it. He was like,
There's an actress that looks like Edna Mode.
Yeah, and that's who he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that. I can't remember her name either.
Is it the lady from 9 to 5?
I don't really recall. Oh, so earlier Elliot was.
What has she been in?
I don't remember.
Okay, well that's helpful.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, earlier Elliot was talking about how you don't really. You're talking about you have a boss who doesn't seem to do anything except harassing other employees, and you kind of get a little glimpse of this here where they're talking about Peter, and then all of a sudden one of the Bobs pulls out Lumbergh's file, and then suddenly like acquiesces to them wanting to make him a to upper management or whatever the line is. He's a straight shooter with upper management written all over him. And then that's one of my working in IT. That's one of my favorite like lines. There is, "Oh, we fixed the glitch." Every time I have to do something like that, where I don't tell someone that I've solved the problem, I just fix the glitch. You know. How you doing on your beverage there, Elliot? Need another one?
I'm almost done with my second.
All right.
Well, when you get up, I want a cookie.
You want a cookie? Okay. Yeah, I remember watching this movie like being younger before I entered the office workspace, and like kind of didn't believe that this is how work was. And it's so now having been involved in that environment for so many years, there's definitely some truth to it. Again, I wish Jeff was here because I feel like his experience is much more in corporate America than either of us.
Yeah, I never really had a corporate America job. I've had, I've definitely done the retail sales thing for a long number of years. And I have had an endless stream of really weird jobs. They're not really weird. I didn't do anything weird.
It's weird that you've done all of them.
Right, that.
Each of them is not weird. The collection of them is.
Right. But I've had a job since I was 14 years old. So, I've been working for a lot of years now. But I have, interestingly, when I've been in an environment close to something like this, it's always been a small company.
So this song, "Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangsta" by Ghetto Boys. Apparently, Mike Judge, he listened to this song. So earlier we're talking about Michael Bolton and how he's this like pasty white nerdy guy listening to like hardcore rap. That was Mike Judge. Like that's where Mike Judge pulled that from. So he would listen to stuff like Ghetto Boys, and he listened to the song. He's like, this song should be in the movies. This is a song that needs to be in a movie. And that's why this song in particular is in this movie. And like, this song is great. And I'm glad that this song entered, the cultural awareness through this film because it's so good, right?
Yeah, it's an amazing song. I am, for the record, also that guy who is the whitest of white guys who listens to hip hop and rap.
Also, the gangster rap was a huge problem for the studio.
Yes,
and
we'll talk about that.
Didn't happen.
We'll talk about that when we get to that scene. But yes, that is definitely something worth mentioning.
Very, very big problem. And they fought over it.
Yeah, like I love this sequence because it's not what you think of when you think of a montage, right?
But it totally is.
Oh yeah, right.
And I love this. Mm-hmm. This is like it's so good. He pulls out his TPS reports that he clearly doesn't give a fuck about, and he cleans a fish on them.
Ron Livingston, who plays Peter, has said that is the first fish that he's ever cleaned and the most recent fish that he's ever cleaned in his life.
I also love this.
Yeah.
Because if I lived in a cubicle, that's what I would think about every single day.
This particular sequence was inspired by Mike Judge's experience working in corporate America, where the guy who Milton was based off of would always complain about stuff. And he said, and one time he was complaining about his desk being moved, and now he wasn't by the window. And so that's what inspired Mike Judge to do that little sequence there.
Yeah. Also TPS reports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also TPS reports.
We haven't talked about that.
I mean, what is there to say? Have you filled them out?
Do you know what it stands for?
There's some disagreement about what it stands for.
No, Mike Judge said exactly what it stands for.
Okay. What did my judge say?
I can't remember right this second.
So they're a real thing, and the disagreement is like, what does it actually stand for versus what does Mike Judge say it stands for, and that's where the disagreement
I love that he
comes
just
from.
leaves Tetris on his computer.
Yeah.
Right? He gives so much not a shit that he didn't even minimize the window.
I also love that he has goldfish, that he's eating goldfish and just have them poured out on his desk.
They're
Right?
fucking
Those were
Cheetos.
Are they Cheetos?
They're
okay.
Cheetos.
But still, like, he's not eating them in a bag. He just dumped the
Yeah.
bag out and just eating them.
Well, he covered his desk when he cleaned the fish with the TPS
Yeah,
reports.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so this is the disagreement with Milton, where he's like, "Have you seen you took my stapler? Where's my stapler?" I believe you have my stapler. I have referenced and used that line right there so many times.
What?
I believe you've been missing a lot of work. Well, I haven't been missing it, Bob.
Yeah.
Right? That's just one of those things that I say without thinking about it. You know, it's just become a part of the vocabulary. So apparently, this line here was improvised as well. Naga, not gonna work here anymore anyway.
Yeah.
So, which is real good.
I can't find where am I
Mm,
reading?
We'll I'm sure someone in the comments will explain to us how we're both wrong about TPS reports.
I believe that people believe this.
Yeah, the less incidents. God, there was a line earlier that's just like blink and you'll miss it, where when Peter first comes back in the office and Michael's talking to him, he was like, "I can't believe you're here. I thought you were gonna come in and start shooting." Like, this movie came out in '99.
Yeah.
Like, before that. I'm not gonna go into that really, but it's amazing how that line in the late '90s was a comedy.
I would love
comedy
to
line.
know how they did this.
Did what?
Practically speaking,
What?
they replicated a printer fucking up royally.
I mean, so the PC load letter, what the fuck does that mean? That was completely improvised. Like, that was not even planned. That wasn't in the script. What's his name? Who plays Michael? He was on Mad TV, and like that's how like he knows Mike Judge and everything. He was just doing his lines and was pushing buttons on the printer, and it just came up with that error, and he just said that. So I'm sure, I mean, God, earlier today I had to restart the printer to print something, and then 2 minutes later I had to print something else, and it wouldn't print, so I had to restart it again.
I do not miss that printer.
Right, and this is the year 2019. So if printing sucks over the span of 20 years, like, that's a timeless joke, right?
And it will never not suck.
Yeah.
We now do printing in an extra D, and it's
And it
more
still
complicated.
sucks.
And that's your constant joke about
Yep.
explaining
Yep.
3D
3D
printing,
printing.
and the complication therein to people who want to get into it.
I love this sequence here where they're talking about their plan to rip off the money, and they hang a lampshade on stealing the plot from Superman 3 and everything. But I mean, of course, this totally makes sense, right? Like what happens with the extra cents when you deal with fractions and everything? I know that there are cents, laws and everything, and things you are and are not supposed to do. But it's a good question, And I don't know how explicitly it's said in the film. I believe it's in the script, but basically the company they work for, banks contract to update their software. And so that's how Michael can inject the software. I guess it's Samir actually who does it, who injects it into other banks. And that's why it's like such a big deal that they're ripping off all these people and all
Right.
these banks and all for all their money and everything.
That whole sentence,
Yeah.
that whole
Talking about sitting in an office and filling out forms in front of a
it
computer.
will never not be relevant.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
It
And
will never not be relevant.
All of the things in this movie will never not.
I
be
mean,
relevant.
that's true, but some things more than others,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Well, I mean, so I love that they include Jennifer Aniston's character because they show that, all right, the main characters work in an office environment in corporate America and they deal with bullshit. But they show a glimpse into another workplace like hers, and it's
the
still the
same.
same bullshit, right? And I love that.
It's just packaged different.
Exactly.
It's all the same bullshit everywhere.
There's this big conversation that was happening in one of the maker groups I'm involved with, and a bunch of people that I hope are listening right now, who are like big names out there, were talking about stuff. It was we were talking with Paul Jackman and Peter Brown and Tim Sway about like making and things like that. And like I kept saying, I kind of go back and forth. Like on one hand, of course, I want to be a content creator / artist for a living, but also my boring office job provides me with a lot of security. And how do I reconcile these two ideas? You know, like okay, yeah, I have to deal with a lot of bullshit, but I have a lot of security in my life versus feeling deeply fulfilled and struggling to pay the bills sometimes. So.
It's hard to give up convenience for
Yeah.
really for anything.
Right, exactly. I love this sequence here where they're at Peter's apartment talking about the plan they're about to do, explaining incorrectly like the realities of prison to his friends, trying to convince them to commit this like heinous felony, right?
I don't know.
I mean, in one day they rip off, what is it, like $300,000?
Accidentally.
Accidentally?
They don't think it's not accidentally. It was on purpose. They just didn't expect it to be that much money that fast.
He made a stupid Monday mistake. Michael had a case of the Mondays.
A stupid Monday mistake.
You want another beer?
Sure.
And the red human wants a cookie.
Yes, I would like a cookie.
I wouldn't mind a cookie. I like cookies.
They're good cookies. You're just gonna bring the whole thing.
Well, he wants a cookie. I really love, they say it really briefly, talking about Samir's character. Like, it's just such a non-issue that he's Muslim, right? Mm-hmm. And in 1999, that's a really progressive thing for them to do, you know? Mm-hmm. All right, here's one of, I'm not going to say my favorite,
A really good
but
scene.
one of the greatest songs from Ice Cube, Down for Whatever. The music in this movie is such a great choice. And again, we'll wait until the scene to talk about it, because
First of all, nobody names the name of their virus.
right.
I was just gonna say that.
I love here Michael looks straight at the camera because it cuts to the bullshit is to deal with. He looks straight at the camera, breaks the fourth wall.
I love this scene. It's like they're trying so hard to be like super spy, like bullshit, whatever.
It's the Office Space Ocean's 11.
Yeah, and they even do the pass off, but they do it the wrong way,
Spinning and everything. And
the wrong hand, and it's just like, what the heck is going on?
the hammer strikes
And,
whenever
like,
they're putting
the-
the floppy disk in.
And then the freeze frame stuff.
Yeah.
It's like-
And then it perfectly cuts to Michael or Peter saying, "Well, that was easy," right? Because like no one gives a shit, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. They could have walked out in the open. They're not doing anything.
I know they literally could have just walked normally.
Yeah. It would be the equivalent of today, somebody being like, hey, here are your documents on a
Yeah.
USB stick. And
Yeah.
you say, oh, okay, I'll take them over here. And you go to another computer, you plug them in, and nobody thinks twice about that.
So the sequence here, the talking Tom, that's the character's name,
Yeah.
where they talk about him committing suicide or attempting suicide and getting hit by the truck. Apparently, in like one of the original, the first cuts of this film, they just kind of showed what happened, and audiences reacted really poorly to it because it was very serious in a comedy. And so they just set it to the voiceover from this character, Drew, and it immediately is a hilarious sequence, right? So whenever I talk to the Red Human about editing our videos, like edit for comedy, this is one of the things that I think of, where you have all these things that are that on their own have a certain feeling, but you then put a voiceover to them or you cut them a certain way, and you can completely change the tone and feel of a sequence, right? And that's why you love editing.
The magic of editing.
The magic of filmmaking.
You can take any movie and make it into anything. You can take this exact movie
And even if-
and cut it to make it a horror movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even if none of the rest of it, even if his voice didn't display how goofy he was, in that same sequence where he talks about the O face, that you lose all respect for that character, which in hindsight makes everything funny.
All right, so here's the most iconic scene of this film, where they take the fax machine, and this is set.
It's a printer.
It's a printer, excuse me, and this is set to Ghetto Boys, the song "Still," and go ahead and say what you were going to say, Red Human.
I was gonna say that this song in particular was heavily hated by the studio. They wanted him to cut it. They went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and ultimately fucking Mike Judd won because it's in the movie, but this was a huge point of contention for them in post-production.
So in particular, what happened is that they had some test screenings.
Yeah.
And they had someone from the studio at the test screening who was like trying to goad the audience into saying, oh, did you wasn't the music so bad? Wasn't the bad all the swearing?
Yeah.
And some kid was like, no, it was hilarious that these like nerdy white guys are beating up a printer like it's a mafia hit.
Yeah.
To this song. And so whatever executive producer from the studio is sitting there next to Mike Judge and just shrugs and goes like, all right, you win.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have this phenomenal sequence set to this phenomenal song that I think once again is just, I know we keep saying it, but this is such a part of like culture.
I love that he doesn't give up the guts that he rips out.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And then he can fucking break dance.
And like he just really can do that. And so he just starts doing it like when they're shooting the scene.
Yeah. Another thing on note to that scene, I forget which character. I think it might have been Michael Bolton, but at some point he went to New York or somewhere and met an actual mafioso guy.
Yeah.
And he complimented him on the accuracy with which they portrayed the scene.
If I remember correctly, because they mentioned that in the retrospective that I mentioned, where he was like outside of some restaurant and they like kind of wave him over and they were like, that hit you did on the printer was very authentic.
Yeah, basically. So they did a really good job with that scene.
Yeah, and like I've like vaguely mentioned like, oh, it's the 20th anniversary of Office Space. We should do an Initech cosplay at Dragon Con, right? Because it's easy. Just wear like dress clothes, and we'll make like little like
Initech badges.
Yeah, little badges.
Yeah.
And we can make like a foam fax machine, or I keep saying fax machine, a printer to carry around or something. But even if we didn't do that, just having the badges would be a hilarious and easy cosplay. I really think we should do that.
We should do the poster and just cover someone in Post-it notes. Walk around with Post-it notes on.
See, I think you should cosplay as Lumberg. I think you'd be hilarious as Lumberg.
You just want to wear suspenders.
Yeah, and glasses. It'd be hilarious.
I pretty sure I have a braided leather belt.
We'll discuss this later.
Yeah. I think of all of the casting choices in this movie, all of which I think were really on point. All of these actors played their role extremely well. I like Jennifer Aniston in here as who she is because she's a, I don't know how to say this. She's like a everybody in this movie just looks like a guy, right? They don't look like movie stars. They just look like people, except for Jennifer Aniston, who's, you know, blonde haired and pretty and
looks like a movie star.
And looks like a movie star, right? TV star, whatever. It's, yes. God, has she ever even been in a movie that anybody has seen?
Many.
Whatever. She seems like somebody out of Hollywood.
At this point,
Red Human put up a screenshot of the scene from Friends where you see her nipples, and then that's all anyone knows or cares.
That's a thing?
yeah, that's
you
the
can
thing.
you can see him through like her bra, and she's wearing a tank top. It was a huge controversy in like '96 or whatever the fuck that happened.
I don't remember this.
Yeah.
Who cares? They're just
I also
nipples.
didn't watch Friends.
I mean,
also
didn't
me
watch
neither,
Friends.
because I was like 9. But anyway, you were saying everyone in this movie seems like
Everybody just looks like a guy, which again goes towards the whole idea of everything that these are all just regular people. These are all archetypes. She's also an archetype, and so you're supposed to identify with the main character. And if you are this dude who works a dead-end job in a cubicle in a bullshit office, you always want the pretty waitress. Because pretty waitresses are a thing everywhere. And pretty much any guy who's heterosexual, who's been to a restaurant, has seen a pretty waitress that he wants to hit on. And hopefully he doesn't, because that's an awful thing to do.
And I mean, and Peter kind of mentions that at the very beginning. He was like, his friends are like, "Oh, why don't you ask her out?" And Peter's like, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just some other asshole customer."
Yeah.
And then, when he decides to not give a fuck, he then decides to. I believe so. They threw this in kind of last minute when Drew, the character Drew, is listing off all of the people that Peter's girlfriend has slept with. One of the names here is, I think, the editor, and they just kind of put that in last minute, and he apparently thought that was hilarious. I think he was on Mad TV as well, the guy who plays Drew. Because I was saying earlier, I know. Can you pull that up? The character's name, the actor's name. I'm sorry, who plays Michael. I know that he was on.
No, he was on Mad TV.
No, I know he was on Mad TV.
Even
I can't
here,
remember
the
his name.
douchebag who wears the wraparound glasses that are form fitting to your face, but like wears them all stupid. Like he's wearing them at the tip of his nose, which is really douchey. But like now that guy wears them on the back of their head. Because that's a thing that we do now.
Right, yeah. Thanks, Guy Fieri.
Or as I like to refer to him, Ursula from The Little Mermaid.
We can only be so lucky.
That would be the greatest thing that happened in any movie.
Oh my god, he's not even on here.
Is it not listing him? That's weird.
Not on that one.
Wow. Anyway, we'll get his name in a minute. But again, he's someone who's kind of been in things. He's not a huge name actor. David Herman, that's right, yeah.
So apparently he was when he was auditioning for this movie, Mike Judd really wanted him to be Michael Bolton, but he was had a contract with Mad TV that he could not get out of to do the movie. So he was trying to get out of it, and he went to one of the script readings or whatever, and decided to yell all of his lines, and then they fired him because he decided to yell all of his lines in the screen reading
On Mad TV, you mean?
on
right?
Mad TV.
Yeah.
No, the pre-production readings.
Right, but on Mad TV, not this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because he was trying to get out of his contract.
I know that. I'm just
I
making
love-
sure they understand.
Yeah.
I love I love the main character who comes up with this plot, and he's like, don't tell anybody about this plot. And they're the first person to tell somebody else.
Yeah.
The first rule of Fight Club is we don't talk about Fight Club.
I was going to mention that because the cut is, she's like, what were you guys celebrating? And he was like, oh, I can't really tell you. Hard cut to, he's telling her exactly what they're doing. Again, editing for comedy. Like,
Yep.
it's just... I've always said that we're only funny in editing. I mean, we're funny people, but we're definitely funnier when we're edited to be funny. And stuff like that is like what comes to mind.
I have, for whatever reason, when you mention this movie, there are several scenes that come up in my mind. One of them is Lumbergh with no shirt on, really sweaty, holding a leg in one hand and a coffee cup in the other.
There's this, I think I've shown it to you. This really, this short bit where Mike Judge is on Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and he's explaining the difference between Hank Hill and Tom Anderson from Beavis and Butthead. And they're the exact same character, but he's doing like the voice back to back. He's like, here's Hank Hill, and he does the line. He's like, here's Tom Anderson, he does the line. It's the same voice. And I just I love Mike Judge. He's so great. I'm glad he's done such good stuff before.
Can we talk about the hairpiece?
Yeah, let's talk about the hairpiece.
Well, no.
Do we talk about the hairpiece now?
No, because now
it's gone.
Now he's gone,
And-
and now we're at the money.
The
Yeah.
money sequence, yeah. So this
The money
is,
shot.
This is basically the point where Mike Judge is not happy with the script, and if
Yeah,
he-
I was going to say, this is the third act.
right, yeah.
It all happens too fast and is not satisfying.
Yeah, and frankly, that's kind of what happens. Like script writing is you have a really good ideas, but how the fuck do you conclude any of them?
Yes.
You know, so I also love that he's blaming them on this problem that was entirely his idea.
His idea.
Which I think Samir says actually.
I put the decimal in the wrong place.
He was having a case of the Mondays when he was writing his code to rip off the money from all the banks.
I mean, but there again becomes a thing that like everybody can relate to that mistake. Everybody has made a small, tiny, mundane mistake that has had drastic repercussions.
I want to cut you off here. I love how how they're having the scene where everyone's half-assedly singing happy birthday to the boss, and like no one's really speaking up, and everyone's kind of sort of singing it. And then this is one of the many things that sets Milton off to eventually burning down the building.
He really wanted some birthday cake.
He wanted some birthday cake.
And they didn't give him the birthday cake.
You can kind of see it in profile here, where his glasses are so thick that he literally cannot see. And if I remember correctly, he had to wear contacts that like
Yes.
reversed that, so he could see anything out of it.
He still couldn't see.
Right, but he still couldn't see.
He had to practice doing certain things,
and he like kept knocking shit over on his desk.
He had to practice picking up the stapler and things like that because he couldn't see
just couldn't see.
anything.
Maybe I'm wrong about the contacts. I can't
No, he
recall
was
exactly.
he was wearing contacts.
Was he? Okay.
Yes, but he still couldn't see through them because they're so thick. And also, they should have got a bigger cake. I could set the building
I could
on
set
fire.
the building on fire.
And he will.
So now we're about to see his name's Orlando Jones, right? The other actor who was also on Mad TV. right? You'll see him in a second. Will you pull it up and double check? I believe his name is Orlando Jones. One of our friends met him randomly at a convention because, again, he's someone who's been in movies. He was in, he was in Evolution.
Is this Murray?
I'm sorry? No. I'll tell you later. Yeah, Orlando Jones. So he was on Mad TV, and he's been in some other stuff. I think just shortly after this, he was in Evolution, which is kind of a whatever movie. But he was in the 7-Up commercials in the late 90s. And I remember there was this one commercial where the joke is he's wearing a T-shirt, and on the front it says "Make 7," and on the back it says "Up yours." And I remember I got in real trouble at school because I bought one of these T-shirts and wore it to school. And so our friend met him at some random convention and was talking to him or whatever. And I commented that. I was like, "Make 7 up yours." And she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot about that. I should have mentioned it." And I was like, that's the only thing that I would say if I ever met Orlando Jones. I would tell him how I got detention because of the commercial he was in.
Well, okay, but that's the last straw.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth listening to the delivery of that line.
Yeah, Stephen Root's. So when they were doing the script reading for this, Stephen Root played several of the characters and played. Stephen Root was Mike Judge's pick for Milton. Stephen Root brought so much to that role and made that role his own. Right.
I feel like there's I don't know this for a fact, but I do feel like there's a little place in the making of a movie that is the allowance of you found an actor that plays the role so perfectly that they get a little bit of allowance to do things that aren't necessarily exactly what's in the script because they just inhabit the character so well. And Milton does that.
Yeah. And so Stephen Root played a couple other characters during the script reading, and apparently it was a really phenomenal reading, and is part of why the studio went forward with it. So here's Orlando Jones. He plays the telemarketer who tells him he smoked crack, but actually is a laid off software engineer. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Stephen Root is he's been in so many things. Like I said, the most recent thing that I know he's been in was in Buster Scruggs. He played the bank teller who, in the second story, Near Adalones, I believe is the name of it, covers himself in pots and pans and gets shot by James Franco and yells out, "Pan shot!"
It's amazing.
It is
if
amazing.
You haven't seen it,
if you've not seen Buster Scruggs, I recommend doing it. I guess sort of on that note, if anyone has any suggestions for the next movie that we should do a commentary track on, let us know.
Yeah, because there's a million of them.
I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't pick one, it's going to be RoboCop eventually.
And RoboCop does need to be among them.
I don't want it to be number 2. But if you don't give us a suggestion, it might be.
It is. We don't want to do. I won't say we don't want to do current movies, but it's more interesting to look at a movie as a retrospective of what that movie meant at the time and what those ideas that the movie represented mean now. And I feel like that's what we've been doing for the whole part of this movie.
Yeah, that's why. So when we decided to do a podcast, people have been asking us for it, and I didn't necessarily want to do it because I feel like
we have to offer something new.
Right, you have to,
whatever it is.
Yeah, you have to break a barrier somewhere. And so my suggestion is let's do a podcast as a commentary track because nobody does that.
Well,
I really don't think. I'm not saying for a fact nobody does, but I really don't think anybody does.
There are definitely commentary tracks out there.
Okay.
I listen to.
But as a podcast, I mean.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know that, but I believe they're out there. I just can't think of any.
It's
not a common format, I should say.
Well, I don't think that it's a hugely popular format, and I think part of the reason why is one of the things that people want from a podcast is that it's concise, but also, I don't know.
I don't know. I think 90 minutes is pretty common for a podcast. I mean, you don't think so? In fairness, literally the only podcast I watch with any sort of regularity, and this is like once a month, is the Joe Rogan Experience.
Right, which is 90 minutes minimum.
Yeah, minimum, right? He had Bernie Sanders on recently, and it was only an hour. And people were like, only an hour? We want like 3 hours with Bernie Sanders, right?
I've never listened to that podcast. I don't have anything against it, but I look at the times of it and I'm like, I don't have time for this shit.
That's legit.
I don't have time to listen to your podcast for an hour. I listen to like 50 podcasts and the vast majority of them are under 30 minutes. They're 30 minutes,
okay.
I would say, is the average.
Okay, fair enough.
Now, podcasting is a format that allows for longer timelines because people can watch it a little bit here and a little bit there. I think that's one of the reasons why this is kind of a hard thing to do this commentary track, because it's the length of the movie.
Right.
And so if somebody's going to listen to this podcast, they've now committed their time to watching this movie.
Or they just listen to us because really we've only talked about some particular scenes and we've described them in their totality. So I don't know. I'm curious what people think of this format and what they think of this podcast. What this podcast may become. Yes. And again, if you have any suggestions for another movie, definitely let us know.
Leave your suggestions down in the comments below.
Yes, do that. Also, like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, don't forget to smash that subscribe button.
Oh my
Smash
God.
the
Have you heard
like
of Twitch
button.
Prime?
Smash the like button and share.
Anyway. Yeah, so like we were saying before, Mike Judge is not happy with the third act of this film because you can just feel like all this is rushed, like the resolution of all of this. And like I think it ends in a mostly satisfactory way. Right.
Kinda, sort
the Red
of.
Human kind of like waves her hand and
Kind of, sort of.
yeah,
Satisfactory.
it's satisfactory, but the more you think about it, the less like sense that it makes because like what is this story about, right? It's about being dissatisfied with the status quo,
Right.
and Peter Gibbons is like, as a character, is like an icon for like anti-work, and this movie ends with him being satisfied working in a manual labor field, as opposed to working in a white collar field, right? And it just seems very. On the surface, it seems really good. But the more you think about it, it kind of falls apart. But I mean, I think it's a fairly satisfactory conclusion. So, and I feel
It's not the conclusion that's the problem. It's everything of how
Leading
you
up to
get to the conclusion, right? It's almost like you have this movie for the first 2/3 of it, and then
it's got to end somehow.
And well, it's the thing is that the problem doesn't actually announce itself until the third act of the film, which makes it seem like it's a completely different movie. And then we go back to that as the very end of the movie.
And the tone kind of shifts slightly.
Very much.
So so we just saw Peter regretting putting the checks in Lumberg's office, and he like tries to fit his hand underneath the door and everything, but he never tries the handle. And then Milton here just walks right up to it and opens the door. So if Peter had thought to open the door, then he would have
To at least try it.
He would have gotten the money and everything.
I was literally talking about this the other day. I have sat there and watched people stand and knock on an ajar door because they just assume that it's locked.
Yep, Milton just opens the door like it's nothing. And if Peter tried that,
Well, he walks up to a door and he does the next logical thing, which is to fucking open it.
I want my stapler.
yeah, I want my stapler. And so he burns the building down, which I don't feel like would be, all's well that ends well. No one ever thinks about the rest of the money because obviously Initech didn't get it back. So it's just hilarious that that's like the conclusion of it.
Well, it's like they had a whole bunch of other problems to deal with fire and everything. So it makes a little bit of sense. It's not great, but
Yeah, everyone in this movie is great. Diedrich Bader is great. Ron Livingston's great. Apparently, Ron Livingston. We should link this in the description as well. Ron Livingston has a personal YouTube that has a single video that he uploaded something like 10 years ago. Maybe it's not quite that old. Where he reenacts the keyboard cat video, like as himself as the cat.
why?
Who knows? Only Ron Livingston knows. And like it's the only video on his channel. It's so bizarre.
Weird.
But it's hilarious, right? Yep, and so the building's on fire and all's well that ends well, and
He's so happy.
yeah, I mean, we see Milton kind of like slinking off into the background. He warned him he was going to burn the building down.
We didn't talk about the sculpture in front of the
Yeah.
the building.
Go ahead.
I don't remember. I had something for it, but I don't remember what it was.
I mean, it's literally one of the other like subtle jokes where it's literally like something being penetrated, right?
Yeah.
I think there's this movie is filled with like small jokes like that. Like Joanna, I think Jennifer Aniston's character, either her or Peter, it references that all these like tech companies have the same nonsensical names, right?
Initech, Initrode.
Yeah, it's just all the same.
Ina something.
Right.
And that's I love that.
Right, the burnt.
The
Stapler.
burnt red slimline stapler.
Swing line.
Yeah, what did I say?
Swim line.
Yeah, whatever.
Look, listen, we've been drinking, okay?
Yeah.
These beers hit pretty hard. What are they?
And you ain't had no food.
8%? Yeah, and I ain't eating all that.
8%, and you
8%.
ain't eating all day.
They're real good. Thank you, Wild Leap. If you'd like to sponsor this podcast, email Elliot at makingitup.live.
Yeah.
No
Yes,
comment.
that is me.
No comment from Elliot. Yeah, Penetrode, Intertrode, right? Where do we?
And I
work
mean,
at?
that hasn't changed, right? Like the convention for naming things has changed, but the fact that they all do the same thing hasn't changed, right? Like 5 years ago, the trend was to whatever your company name was, leave out a letter,
Right. Yeah.
usually a vowel, right? So you butt two consonants up together, but it still kind of makes the same sound.
Right.
So, and of course, because we're talking about it, I can't think of a single example.
Grinder.
That's the only one I could think of. Thank you. Thank you. But Imager does the same thing. What's the other photo one that nobody uses anymore? It's now owned by Yahoo.
Shit.
Flickr.
Yeah, Flickr. Yeah. Stuff like that.
People
But-
still
but-
use that.
Not
people
that they
still
changed
use
their
that.
terms of service, and you don't get free image hosting anymore.
You still do up to a certain extent.
But it's a very low number.
No, it's a very high number. It's like a gigabit.
I know a lot of people that moved away from it.
Professionals use it. Also, Milton got all the money.
Yeah, Milton got all the money, but it just go. This ending sequence is great because he's still complaining. He's still unhappy.
Yeah.
He has $300,000.
And he's ignored by people on a resort who are known to be people who like bend over backwards to make your every wish and dream come true.
Yeah. So
It's just because he's Milton.
Yeah, I could write a letter to your board of tourism.
I could have this place condemned. So do it, Milton.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, this movie's great.
We did it.
Ron Livingston's Peter, so we got his name right.
Yeah.
David Herman. We had to look that up. I know I knew that name, but again, he's been in so few things.
Which again, I think is unfortunate because everybody in here acted their part really, really, really well.
Yeah.
Well, they're not unknown, and they definitely went on to do other things after this movie. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they're all
And
character
Richard Reel's
actors.
been in like a million things, right?
Yeah. So is Diedrich Bader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's been in a million. He's in like every comedy movie.
John C. McGinley was, as we said, was in Scrubs. The guy-
Dr. Cox.
Yeah, the guy that played Lumber, Gary Cole, like he still gets stopped on the street. It was like
Yeah.
people asking, "Do you have that TPS report?" Like it's been 20 years. Can you imagine like the staying power of like that character? You know,
Orlando Jones was in.
he's been in a lot.
Yeah. They have all been in a lot of things.
He was in Blazing Saddles, wasn't he? Was that him?
No, oh my God, that's way before him.
Yeah, way before.
Who was in Blazing Saddles?
I don't recall the name. I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah, I have vague memories of that movie. I saw it 20 years ago.
What's his name?
I can't remember it. I've been drinking.
I had it on the top of
Me
my
too.
head, and it's Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks. Yeah, I'm not a huge Mel Brooks fan.
I just said that name.
No, you
Did
didn't.
you? Someone
thought
check.
it.
Oh,
Didn't say it.
yeah, I did think it because I was going to say that Mel Brooks film, and then I finally thought of Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, you didn't say
Yes,
Mel
it's Mel
Brooks.
Brooks. I like Mel Brooks.
He's fine.
He's okay.
It's,
That's my opinion.
It's
Mel Brooks.
absurdist.
He's okay.
It's Mel Brooks films feel like British comedy, only he's not British.
Jewish comedy.
I mean, it's definitely Jewish comedy, and I love old Jewish men. They're great. They're universally
were.
hilarious.
You wish you were an old Jewish.
I kind of really do wish I was an old Jewish man. I wish I was a crotchety old Jewish man. I use similar terminology. I use the word schmutz.
That guy's name is Bob Boo Boom Zaborski.
Zaborski.
Yeah, he was one of the prop makers. Good job on you. I wonder
Sorry.
if you made the swing
No.
line stapler. You know, I love watching credits for even movies that are only this old because like of how short they are, right? You watch any modern movie and you're there for 20 minutes watching the visual effects artists, and we're probably 90% of the way done with our credits here.
No, that's the end.
That's
20th
the end.
Century
There you go.
Fox.
No, it's not done yet.
No, but the rest of it is like these
production
are
companies.
Yeah.
Skywalker Sound.
Yeah. Yeah, so Office Space. I love this movie, right?
Is there a stinger at the end of these
There,
credits?
no, we're not gonna have someone coming in.
Yeah,
wanting
Thanos.
to-
Thanos runs the next office. He's back.
we're not
He's
gonna-
back, and he's your
back.
boss.
Yeah, we're not gonna have what's Michael Scott show up and be like, I'm here to talk to you about the Office Initiative.
Oh my god!
Right? That's not how this is gonna end. So
You know, I was Kelsey last
No
night.
Tears by Scarface. That's the song that's in the car in the beginning. I meant to mention that before.
Kelsey, I came home and Kelsey was watching The Office, and she was like, I can't. I've tried so many times, and I just can't get into this show. And it's like I can't either. I
Real
don't.
hard. It's not that funny.
It's not that funny, and I don't
And the only reason
connect to cringe humor the way some other people do because it hits way too close to home for me. So I feel that internally in a way that does not make it's not humorous to me. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, same.
I mean, how do you feel about cringe humor in general?
Some of it is good, but I think the key to cringe humor is you have to relate to it enough to know what it must feel like to feel that kind of cringe. But you can't connect to it so much that it reminds you of cringe moments from your past. And that's what a lot of The Office does for me. I feel socially awkward in a lot of situations. So when I watch that shit happen on screen, I'm like,
Hold on,
I know I've
hold
done
on.
that before.
This film was cut entirely on a computer.
Yeah, that's important. Because at this point, some people were still using
Yeah, cutting.
Yeah. Cutting machines.
Cutting
I think it's
machines.
Werner Herzog that said that someone needs to make a cologne that is eau de Kodak because he misses the smell of a editing room.
That's
Yeah.
pretty great.
So
All right.
yeah, so that was Office Space.
Yeah.
This movie is great. Like it's again, I said this a dozen times already. It's so timeless, right? It feels, aside from the fact that they don't have cell phones and they do use 20-year-old Macs, this movie is completely timeless.
The subject matter, the dialogue, the
setting.
the setting, all of that stuff hasn't changed in the past however many years, and unfortunately probably isn't likely to change in the next however many years until literally all of these jobs are taken over by a computer. That's the thing that's going to change the environment, is when people aren't doing these jobs. But as long as people are doing these jobs, that environment will always be that way.
So to end this, Elliot, what would you do if you had $1 million?
What?
That's the question that gets asked at the beginning. What would you do if you had $1 million?
Not much. $1 million doesn't go very far these days. I'd pay off my debts, invest some money, and probably buy a house.
All right, you do not understand the question the same way Samir does not. Red Human, what would you do if you had $1 million?
I'm also boring and a crotchety old Jewish man.
That's true.
I'd remake Office Space.
Ouch.
Remake Office Space.
Or
Goodness.
reboot or whatever.
Reboot Office Space.
Sequel, C-boot, whatever.
Okay.
What would you do?
I would invest in Bitcoin.